Hey everybody, for tonight's video, I wanted to talk about the state's response to the defense's request for discovery and the section in there where it specifically talks about the possibility of there being an informant who would not be called to testify as a witness. I'm going to tell you who I think the informant could be. I'm going to let you know how I came to that conclusion, and then I'm going to tell you why this person will not be required to testify in court. Recently, I had been thinking about what Bryan may have been doing in the hours before the murders occurred on the night of November 12th. What was he doing from 5 p.m. until 2 a.m. before he decided to head over to Moscow and commit the murders? The other thing I was thinking about is why would Bryan have chosen that specific time to head over to Moscow and commit the crimes? Had he identified, 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. as the perfect time? Or was there a different reason why he would have been en route at 2:47? For example, could it loop in with a previous timeline that evening with what occurred and what set everything in motion? So the best evidence we have from the outside to put together a timeline would be the information we have about Kaylee and Maddie being at the corner club from 10 p.m. until about 1:30 a.m. And then we know Bryan left his apartment at roughly 2:45 a.m. when his phone was turned off to avoid the cell phone towers. The interesting thing here is the timeline of the girls leaving the corner club and getting food and then heading home and getting home at about 2 a.m. Had they left the corner club at about 1:30, aligns pretty well with if Bryan had left the corner club just after 1:30 and driven back home into Pullman, which is roughly, say, 20 minutes from the time you leave the corner club to the time he would arrive back home. That would actually put Bryan back at his apartment at roughly 2 a.m., for example, if he had left the corner club shortly after the time Kaylee and Maddie had left the corner club. So it is interesting to me that the time Bryan left his apartment does align somewhat with the timeline of Kaylee and Maddie arriving home. And that would have given him just the right amount of time to gather and prepare and then head out about 2:45 toward Moscow. Versus it just being kind of a random time that Bryan chose to head over there. How would he have known to leave at 2:47? Why not 1:30? Of course he was stalking the house, so he probably had an idea of their schedule, but they were out this night. There was a football game, and he really wouldn't have known what time they were going to be returning to the house or what was going on unless he was in town kind of seeing what was happening. I mean, did he just sit in his apartment all day and then out of the blue just leave his apartment and head over to Moscow? Or would he have gone over there earlier in the day or earlier that evening and been around and been checking the area out and been seeing kind of what's going on and then returned back to prepare for committing the crime? I think that would be more likely of somebody who's shown the stalking kind of habits that we have here versus him sitting there at home and then out of the blue just up and leaving and saying, okay, it's time to go. So just kind of looking at the timeline, I revisited the evidence we have of Kaylee and Maddie on camera. We have the still image that was released from the corner club. There's that short 17-second video that was released where it shows Maddie, Kaylee, and Jack S. walking to the grub truck. And then there's about a 10-minute video of all of them at the grub truck where they've ordered and they're waiting for their food. I wanted to show you a few things that jumped out to me as I looked back at this footage. So I'm going to start with the grub truck video and then work my way back toward the corner club. But what I want to talk about here in this footage is the body language between Kaylee and Maddie right after they put in their order, when they're kind of standing there and Maddie walks over and they're talking, but Maddie leans in really close and is almost talking into Kaylee's ear and kind of looking down at her phone while they're chatting. And it seems to me that there's something kind of between the two of them that they're discussing, that they're kind of keeping quiet from the people around them. It's almost as if Maddie moves over to the one side of Kaylee on the opposite side of Jack S. because he may have been aware of something going on as well, and she was kind of keeping it quiet in between her and Kaylee. But then throughout this video at the grub truck, you do notice that Kaylee is very interested in her phone, and she's looking down at it the whole time, and she's definitely focused on whoever it is that she's talking to, even to the point where there's moments where Maddie's kind of just standing there doing her own thing and Kaylee's looking down, focused on the phone. So in my opinion, there was something very interesting going on shortly after they left the corner club. Now, this kind of ties into this other footage I'm going to talk about here, where it shows them walking from the corner club to the grub truck, because I do think that there was something that happened at the corner club that they were discussing, or something that happened that evening, not necessarily even at the corner club. It could have been outside or nearby, even earlier that evening, but it does seem to me that whatever it is that Kaylee's focused on would have been something that happened recently. I mean, this is kind of like, it looks like breaking news to me, the way that she's focused on her phone. Now, this is just a clip of it here. I do have the full video on my channel as well if you want to watch that full 10-minute video, and you can see just how much she's on her phone while they're waiting. So next we have the footage here of Kaylee, Maddie, and Jack S. walking from the corner club to the grub truck. What I wanted to point out here was, if you listen to the way that Kaylee says to Maddie, "What did you say to Adam?" Her voice kind of goes up. She's not really saying, what did you tell Adam? And in my opinion, it sounds like Adam might be reacting to something. So when I initially saw this and we didn't know really as much about what was going on, I kind of thought maybe Jack D had gotten word from Adam about her move plans, and she was asking Maddie, "Hey, what did you tell Adam about me moving that Jack D got word of?" But looking back on this now, the way she says, "What did you say to Adam?" in my opinion, it feels like Adam's reacting to whatever she said to him, and Kaylee's getting word from Jack D, for example, on what Adam is saying and how Adam is reacting. So I'm going to play that video for you right now.
What did you say to Adam? I told Adam. What did you say to Adam? I told Adam.
So let's take a look at where Adam was, and we'll check out the footage we have from the corner club. Now, this is the closest we have in the timeline to the time period we're trying to figure out, which is prior to 10 p.m. Now, we know Kaylee and Maddie were at the corner club from 10 p.m. until about 1:30, but we're not quite sure where they were before that. And the other interesting thing is, all we have from the corner club on that timeline is a still image from roughly 1:30 when they were about to leave. In the footage here, we have Kaylee and Maddie in the top left talking to somebody who I believe is Jack D, based off of their body language. They both were good friends with Jack and had known him for a long time. You can see Maddie's standing pretty close when she's talking to him, and it would make sense that they would say hi to each other when Kaylee was in town and getting ready to move and kind of visiting with everybody. I would imagine she would be friendly with Jack D. In the middle of the image here, we have Jack S, or the hoodie guy. The person standing by the door there, I believe, is the owner of the corner club, based off of pictures that are on the corner club website. And the person there on the far right sitting on the stool is presumed to be Adam. Now, this picture doesn't really do the corner club justice. It's actually a lot bigger than you would think looking at this image. And keep in mind that we also know that law enforcement has additional video footage from the corner club as evidence. And you can see that supported here in this image, because in the top left you can see this is camera 3. Okay, so we know most likely there's a camera 1 and a camera 2 somewhere. And then in addition to that, there could be a camera 4 or a camera 5. But all we have from the corner club is a camera 3 still image, and we know law enforcement has additional footage. So you have to ask yourself, why hasn't that footage been released? What is special about the other video footage that they have? You know, they released the grub truck video that we just watched. They released the video of them walking down the sidewalk. Why wouldn't they release the video of the corner club footage if there isn't anything special there or relevant to the case? So again, this is a Saturday night after a home football game, so we can assume that the corner club was pretty crowded. There were also interviews done early on by witnesses, specifically that guy Joe, who was hanging out at the grub truck talking to Jack S., and he was also at the corner club, and he did mention that there were guys going up and trying to talk to Kaylee and Maddie that night at the corner club. Now, we don't know who those guys were or guy was, but there is an independent witness there also stating that there were interactions happening between unknown males and Kaylee and Maddie. So who were those people? Why hasn't this footage been released, right? Now, I was able to track down camera 1 and 2, and you can see it here in the footage from the corner club up on the ceiling. So we know that we at least have a couple more angles of the corner club here, and then through these doors kind of there in the center of the picture would be what I believe is Vandal Hall, which is kind of another section to the bar. So I'm wondering if there's possibly a camera 4 or a camera 5 even in this other part of the building. They could even have a camera on the outside of the building as well. So everyone, I do think it's very possible that there's a lot we don't know about what happened that night, and it's very possible that Bryan Kohberger could have even been at the corner club when Kaylee and Maddie were there, and maybe had even interacted with them in some way earlier that night. At the very least, I think Kaylee and Maddie may have noticed a creepy guy watching them earlier that evening. And I think it's possible Maddie told Adam what happened earlier that night, and as they were walking to the grub truck, Jack was texting Kaylee and telling Kaylee what Adam was saying and how Adam was reacting to that news, being upset, being a friend of Kaylee and Maddie. And maybe it even went as far as Adam asked Bryan to leave the corner club. Remember, there's reports about somebody being asked to leave the corner club that night, but we really don't know who that was. We've learned a lot more about Bryan and the way that he interacts with people based off of his discipline at his job and having conflict with students and having conflict with professors. So I could very well see an interaction happening between Maddie and Bryan or Kaylee and Bryan that night that didn't go very well. And I could see that being relayed to Adam, especially if it happened at the corner club, because Adam works there. And Maddie, on her way out, could have been saying goodbye to Adam and told Adam, oh, hey, by the way, this is what happened. I didn't appreciate it. And then they left. And then shortly after that, Jack D is texting Kaylee and letting her know what happened. This could have angered and upset Bryan, and it would have been just at about the right time he would have left, driven home, prepared for the crime, and returned to get his payback. Now here's why Adam will not be testifying about any of this. So there's different types of informants out there. You can have the kind of informant, for example, who might have been part of a criminal enterprise like the mob, and that person is now giving up information and kind of pointing the finger at, say, the mob boss, right? And he's kind of a co-conspirator of crime within the mob, and he's ratting out, the rest of the guys. So that would be the type of informant that could potentially have to defend themselves in court, because the defense would want the opportunity to cross-examine whatever that person's saying. And in order to defend yourself, you would kind of have to know who is saying these things about you, so that you could counter that. So that would be one type of informant. Now, another type of informant would be somebody who gives law enforcement information that helps the investigation. Now, that information may or may not be admissible in court. So law enforcement can take that information to further their investigation, but they can't necessarily take that information and use it to secure a warrant, for example. It's not admissible to the court. But in this case, with Adam being the informant, in my opinion, he will not be testifying because the information that Adam has is hearsay. Maddie is not available to validate what she told Adam. So everybody, we don't know yet what Bryan was doing in the hours leading up to the crimes that evening. I do think that law enforcement knows a lot more than we think about where Bryan was in the hours and days leading up to the crimes. Please let me know what you think, everybody. Could Bryan have been at the corner club watching Kaylee and Maddie, and then when they left, he left, went back home, got ready for the crime, and returned to Moscow? I really appreciate you watching, everybody. Please hit the subscribe button. My next video will be coming out very soon.